everybody. Welcome. Thanks so much for being here today. It's so exciting to have this event here in Adelaide, and we're also going live on Zoom, so we're very, very excited. We have one of the most amazing medical practitioners here. Now today is to focus on our science and the validity of the product of Redox molecules. Bart and Melissa Cotter are going to be our hosts today. We are very lucky to have them. They are the first to bring redox molecules to Australia, and they are leaders globally in the redox therapy industry. They've got over 17 years of experience in the health industry as well. So Bart, I'd love to pass it over back to you, and I hope you all enjoy learning about our redox molecules.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to a very exciting event, and thank you, Alyssa. Look, I think we've got our technical challenges sorted out, I hope, but this is a very exciting technology that we're happy to share with you. One of the things that, just to give you a little bit of history, we were some of the pioneers that helped introduce this to the Australian market. It was actually about 3.5 years ago. We had some good friends of ours that called us up and asked us to take a look at this. Come to find out, this technology was actually in a little town I grew up in, Logan, Utah. And I went over to Salt Lake City, met the founders of the company, met the atomic medical physicist, Dr. Gary Samuelson. I was listening to the presentation and really understanding what this technology was. I started thinking of people, and there was one person in particular that really popped in my head, is that I knew that he needed to know about this technology. And that's the gentleman that I'd like to introduce, and that is Mr. Dan Doyle. Dan has been a remarkable entrepreneur. He's built 20 businesses in the last 20 years. He's just a fantastic guy, just a really great guy. But at the time, he was dealing with some pretty serious health challenges that he's going to share with you, tell you a little bit more about. And we've been on quite a fun journey for the last 3 years, taking this. In fact, Dan's just been on kind of a world tour, sharing this technology through Asia and through the United States, and talking about what it's done for him. So
thank you for everybody being in the room here, and thank you for everybody being on the Zoom call from all around the world. My name is Dan Doyle. I'm from Sydney, Australia. I am really excited about this breakthrough technology. I'm literally physically here because of it. You're gonna realize why I'm so excited. I'm going to tell my story. I'm going to talk to you about these breakthrough products. Something that everybody needs to know about, in particularly the ASEA cell signaling supplement and also the Renew 28. So these two marquee products. There's a little bit more of a range, but this is the big breakthrough. The ASEA Redox supplement, the cell signaling supplement, has been around for about 8 years. And then about 5 years after that came out, they came out with the Renew 28. So I'm going to talk about my story, but what you're hearing about today is nothing less than, and this is what health practitioners and professionals around the world are talking about, nothing less than the single greatest health science, anti-aging, sports performance breakthrough of our lifetime. Not said lightly, it's a profound statement, but we have got an incredible breakthrough in these two products. So a little bit about my story. I'm very successful in business. I built 20 traditional businesses in Sydney. Just kept building and turning over from all different types of industries. And then in 2011, I got a major shock. So I'm going to start before that, though, just to show you how passionate I was about my sports growing up in Sydney, playing different sports, rugby league. I know your AFL supporters down here in Adelaide. But I did judo, gymnastics, aerobics, obviously at the back of the class all the time. That's the reason I did aerobics. And surfing, I surfed a lot in Sydney, but I also did this thing called bodybuilding. Who knows what a bodybuilder is? Okay, this isn't Photoshop. This is me when I was 24 years old. So this goes back a little bit, but I just want to show you how passionate I was about my sports, how I excelled at probably everything that I did in life, and how I used to look after myself. Okay, so this is Johnny Manor, and so, yeah, unfortunately, Johnny had the good one, I had the bad one, but the good one came back. He's 21 in this photo. Within the next 2 years, he went through the battle and the challenge that he'd been through before and I've been through. We lost him at the age of 23. It was very, very sad. So that's how serious these issues are. And the next, basically, I'll just talk about the next slide soon. So I made a choice at the end of the 2.5 years of those hospital visits. Basically, my specialist told me to get my affairs in order, literally hit me between the eyes. I asked for it because I needed to know for the sake of me and my family. We had a little bit of a journey in a camper van around Australia, had a bit of fun. I made a decision to take the responsibility of my health back into my own hands at this stage. I did some research. I went up to an alkaline diet, trying to suffocate this thing within. I spent a lot of money on nutritional products, super juices, antioxidants, alkaline water, all these things over a 2-year period. And this next shot is the result after 2 years of spending all that money and on that alkaline diet. Next slide, please. Guys, this is a reflection of what was happening on the inside still. So things weren't good. If you can see, my eyes had red and yellow rings around them. My skin was horrendous. And as I said, it was still an indication of what was happening on the inside. This was October 2014. Remember that date. This is when I got a call from a friend of mine, Bart Cotter, who's on the call with us now, introduced us. He said, I think I've found something that could help. That's all he said to me. Now, he was in Salt Lake City. I jumped on a plane, flew over there. I flew over with a friend of mine, Malcolm Sword. Malcolm had been dealing with a skin issue for over 40 years, and he spent over $100,000 trying to conquer this skin issue, to no avail. So we went and looked at this technology, these breakthrough products for our own health. Now, we're in the boardroom of the company called ASEA, which is a cellular health company who's got these breakthrough products. They only had this liquid at the time. So we went into the boardroom and these bottles were sitting on the table. Dr. Gary Samuelson, who's an atomic and medical physicist, one of only 5 in the world, he came up with this breakthrough. So he was talking about the science behind the breakthrough. He was talking about this product, talking about the technology, and everything he was saying was going over my head because I'm not a scientist. But there's a few things that he said that I understood, that what was in that bottle sitting on the table was 100% non-toxic and it could have health benefits. And it was free. So we were gorging it down. So I went through about half a bottle while sitting there, and Malcolm did the same. I went back to the hotel room to have a shower, and because we were meeting founders, Vertus Norden, Tyler Norden, Dr. Gary Samuelson for dinner, took off my shirt and I'm covered in these little red spots all over my chest, my shoulders and my back. Now I'm thinking it's the cabin pressure from the plane, it's the blanket on, blanket off, and all that. I didn't take any notice of it. But basically what I was trying to achieve here in 2 years on this pristine alkaline diet, taking all these products, was happening in literally 3 hours. Toxins were coming out so fast they weren't waiting till I went to the bathroom. They were coming out of my skin. So I consider that my first win. Now the next morning I woke up and I thought I'm going to test this stuff that I was drinking the day before, and I had some that morning before breakfast. So I've had a caffeine intolerance for 20 years. Any more than 2 coffees, I'm buckled over with issues all day. And my existence post those hospital visits was that I used to drink more coffee to give myself all more issues because I was so tired and lethargic and fatigued from what I went through. I used to give myself issues to keep myself awake during the day. So that's what I was going through back then. The next morning at breakfast, I decided to have 6 coffees. Now, I know it's to do that in America, though, with the way the coffee tastes, I mean, right? So I had 6 coffees. I went through the whole day and there was nothing to remind me of what I endured for 20 years. So that second win came overnight. And the third win came the next day. And this is when the light bulb went on. So I had so much lung damage from those hospital visits that I was having trouble breathing and talking at the same time. You can see I don't have that problem anymore. My lungs are functioning perfect the next day. That's when the light bulb went on. So in 48 hours, basically, I had profound results, benefits from using these products. I came back to Australia. I kept sneaking it in. It wasn't here at that stage. I paid a lot of money in double shipping and all sorts of things to get it here, and I kept drinking the product. Unfortunately, I came from being a very successful businessman, and nothing financially would concern or worry us about us in life, to losing my health, and we lost everything. So when I got back to Australia, I could only afford to drink 1 bottle a week. But over time, I increased the amount that I was taking. And at the end of 2015, in December, I got some really good news. And this next photo is going to show you that exact moment when the doctor said, what a shame that's in front of him. They can't find any sign of those 2 major issues. No sign at all. But that was great. But the thing was that I had multiple injuries from playing sports from 35 years ago that were debilitating. They were getting worse and worse and worse every single year, with a neck problem, 80% use of one shoulder and one hand, back problems, hip problems, pelvic problems. My whole body was rebuilt in 2015. All these things just disappeared. So that was my personal story from no health to this photo here now. Now, the next photo just shows, fortunately you won't be able to see it too well, but the anti-aging component, because I stayed on the product, obviously. I kept using the products. Now, we can't make any claims here. These products, the Serum U28, are not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, prevent any disease or medical condition. But if you keep a secret, I'm going to make one claim. Prior to using this gel on my face 3.5 years ago, I used to be quite ugly. You see the photos, there's the evidence, come on. So, but if you can show the next photo. Oh, we're going to go straight into PowerPoint. Anyway, end of the day, guys, what we've got here is a massive breakthrough. This isn't curing anything. What this is doing is getting your body to do it for you. So we've got the signals and communication here in this bottle, which isn't nutrition. It's not anything that the body has to work out what to do with it. Everything that we have that's natural, we're putting it in, the body's juggling it, and the body needs to work out what to do with it. What we have in this bottle are molecules called Redox signaling molecules that signal the body to heal itself, to call the whole body in every single system, the immune system. I mean, these guys are key in the regulation of our major systems, detecting cells, protecting, repairing, replacing, activating antioxidants. They literally run our body top to bottom. Now, we've got these molecules in the bottle. I don't want to go too much into the science because we do have a real expert on the call with us here today, Dr. Robertson Ward. So as long as you guys are clear that we have what he's talking about in a bottle, we're going to hand over to Dr. Robertson Ward and bring Bart and Lisa back on to introduce him. He is a total third party, nothing to do with this company, but he's going to talk about the science behind the role and function of these molecules within the human body, what they do. And we're going to have a Q&A as well. We're going to have that live with you guys and anybody in the chat box. There's over 200 people on this call now. For anybody that's not a medical practitioner, please do not ask any questions. This is specifically for health practitioners. So whoever's a health practitioner, more than welcome to ask. So Bart and Lisa, I'm going to hand back over to you. Thanks for having us on, and really appreciate Dr. Robertson Ward coming on with us today because we know it's very, very late in America.
It is late in America, and gosh, it's almost 10 o'clock. I really thank Dr. Robertson Ward for joining us on this webinar. So we're excited to hear what you've got to say, and I'm going to turn it over to Melissa.
Yeah, so as a brief intro to Dr. Robertson Ward, I can't mute them on their end. So Dr. Robertson Ward, also known as the Redox Doc, he's an acclaimed community medical physician and researcher. He was awarded a medical degree from the University of Illinois, and at the University of Cincinnati, he was recognised as the Family Practice Resident of the Year. He has served in top-level positions as a family practitioner and in hospitals all over Midwestern United States. Dr. Ward has directed over 15 full clinical research studies on a broad range of topics, and he has an intense interest in helping people find real solutions to their health problems. As an acknowledged expert in the field, Dr. Ward finds positive and tangible human physical transformations as he applies the science of redox biochemistry to clinical challenges in his functional medicine clinic. And this is a book that Dr. Rob Ward has authored. It's called Healthy Cells, Healthy Life, Balancing Redox for Better Health. So thank you so much, Dr. Ward. We'll hand the time over to you.
Well, thanks very much. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
We can.
Good.
No technology issues in Salt Lake City tonight.
Right. I'm going to try and open up my screen here, but it doesn't seem to be cooperating. Let me try again. Nope. Bart, we did this earlier today. Let's see here. There we go.
There we go.
Okay, very good. So I'm I'm excited about spending a little time sharing some science with you. And it's a fun thing to do for me, and I hope I don't put you to sleep. But being that it's about 10 o'clock here, you might lose me. I don't know. So let's just dive in. Redox science has to do with the biochemistry of little tiny molecules that are produced in every cell in our body. And they're produced, as I'll talk about later, in our cells in a certain manner, and they're critical to every physiological reaction that we have in our body. And that is true for other animals and plants. So it's a broad-ranging science, and it's a fairly new field. However, truly it is riddled with well over 160,000 studies on redox science in all kinds of journals and articles that you'll find. And so it's really not a esoteric sort of world of science. In fact, there's textbooks and all kinds of wonderful things that you can wrap your mind around to if you're so inclined. Even Dr. Watson, who was the Nobel Prize winner for unraveling the shape of our DNA, has embarked on amazing theories that he's developing about where redox biochemistry plays into a myriad of health challenges from diabetes to cancer. And so we're all fighting challenges pertaining to oxidative stress in our physiology. And we deal with these things as best we can at a cellular level, but maintaining homeostasis depends on a balance of these molecules. And not always can our cells do that. So chronic inflammation or oxidative stress can ensue, and many health conditions from Alzheimer's disease to Parkinson's disease to celiac disease have their roots in breakdown in redox chemistry at a cellular level. And so, as this article points out, many major human disorders depend on redox regulations, and it is quite likely that a group of substances and the next generation of therapeutics will be coming revolving around this science because it's at the core of our biology. So I'd like to suggest that, as this little Huffington Post made a point, there are 5 emerging technologies in science that will probably shape our lives in years to come. And these 5 include redox signaling technology. So it's not, even though it may not be part of your vocabulary, or maybe it's a part of your distant vocabulary from college biochemistry, this science has been emerging right underneath our nose. So tonight I'd like to talk a little bit about our cells and the way they react, and I'm going to use this an acronym to help us develop this concept. And so in order for our cells to have proper biology and to survive and thrive and do their work, they have to adapt and change at all times. So I'd like to talk about our cellular anatomy, mechanisms of adaptation, some redox science basics, and some practical solutions as well. So let's run through cell anatomy. Those health professionals tonight that are watching this will know much of this, but it's a rather interesting analogy. So we've got a cell membrane that maintains our fluid balances and things of that sort. The nucleus of a cell directs the cell action, and it helps to protect the DNA, critical to cell life. The endoplasmic reticulum kind of wraps around the nucleus, and it's involved in detoxification and other metabolic functions. The mitochondria in our cell anatomy are the powerhouse. They run cellular respiration, as it's called, and it is where energy is manufactured from food. Our vacuoles prepare waste for excretion into the outside world or inside of the cell, as the case may be. Lysosomes break down nutrients to smaller components so that the cell can use them. The Golgi apparatus distributes cellular byproducts throughout the cell. So it is true, if you've ever wondered where the expression comes from, if your cells are healthy, so are you. Well, this is where it's at. Our cell anatomy is actually very analogous to our human anatomy. And so this is where that old phrase comes from. So the cell membrane is equivalent to the work of our kidney. The nucleus is like our brain. The endoplasmic reticulum is functioning very much like our liver. The mitochondria work like our lung. The vacuole is like our colon. The lysosomes our stomach. And the Golgi apparatus represents blood vessels that distribute vital nutrients and oxygen throughout the body. So given that, let's talk about how our cells work and how they adapt to the world. And we'll kind of walk our way through this, an acronym called REACT. So R represents rest or recovery, and the nucleus and the mitochondria are involved in this. So our cells require rest to allow for repair. It is during our sleep that hormones and other biorhythms orchestrate a course of events that allow for everything from repolarization of our brain cells to smoothing out our surfaces of our joints in our and cartilage of our joints. The central nervous system is a wonderful example of this. So our brain cells, astrocytes, are very sophisticated, but they're terribly slow at repair work if anybody's had nerve damage. So the other problem is that our brain cells are very sensitive to toxic exposures. So to compensate, the brain has extra antioxidants and a lot of blood flow. The brain consumes 20% of our oxygen, but only represents about 2% of our body weight. So during sleep, our brain cells repolarize. They literally restore the electrical balance that they need. And the membrane of the cells are critical in this process. Another example of recovery and how that all kind of plays out is our muscle cells. They are loaded with mitochondria for a purpose. Those mitochondria help repair and accelerate the energy production and an assistance with detoxification of a muscle cell as well. Joint cartilage, I mentioned earlier, oxidation and inflammation are directly linked to redox balance. If we lose the balance, we lose the ability to do this delicate balance of repair. So joint repair from wear and tear requires redox molecules to be present in balance. So let's talk about those little mitochondria for a second, the powerhouse. Mitochondria are critical in activating the process of repairs, and they produce redox molecules during the natural process of the Krebs cycle, or the manufacturing of ATP energy. So food is considered converted into ATP, and redox molecules are a critical part of this cycle, and they are produced right there in normal cases. So redox molecules are primarily comprised of about 4 atoms: hydrogen, oxygen, nitrogen, and chloride. So redox molecules are combinations of these atoms in 2 or 4 molecule sizes. So it could be 2 atoms or 4 atoms or 3 atoms, for example. So redox molecules are critical. They're molecular activators of every chemical reaction in our cells. They're right at the core of activating these chemical reactions from A to Z. They're also, secondarily, a primary mode of cellular communication inside and between cells. So they activate chemical reactions and they provide avenues of communication. So there are 2 categories of actions of redox molecules. They activate the efficiency of antioxidant molecules like glutathione. So they're stopping oxidative stress and block what we like to call cellular rust. The other main category of action is that they facilitate cellular communication. So they balance our tendency to have inflammatory problems, and that is a big deal. Without them, we will die within minutes. If we didn't have any redox molecules, we would hardly survive for a very few minutes. So here's the big problem. As we live and age, the mitochondria in our bodies decline in number and capacity. We lose roughly 10% of our mitochondrial density per decade of our life. And we also lose about 10% of the efficiency of the work of these little mitochondria powerhouses. So what are we going to do about it? It's a problem. And it's interesting that most all of our health problems align according to these 2 categories of actions of redox molecules. not by coincidence. So if we look at human health or lack of health, on one side we have problems that are directly linked to oxidative stress or cellular rust, where there's a buildup of toxins and the cell can't correct this. And as a result, the body has to try and adapt in some way. And we see an expression of disease, from heart disease to osteoarthritis, type 2 diabetes, metabolic syndrome, etc. On the other side of the equation is problems related to inflammatory issues or inflammation. And in this case, we see problems such as allergy, asthma, thyroid problems, autoimmune issues, cancer, and such. So we've got two sides of the equation. And of course, there are situations where we have a bit of a mixture. But typically, people tend to have a tendency to have more rust on one side or more inflammation on the other as they live their lives. So RE, E stands for eat or nutrition. And our vacuoles and endoplasmic reticulum and cell membrane are big time involved in our ability to assimilate nutrients. So we've got to take in nutrients as well as ample amounts of water to maintain our health. The kidney is designed to conserve or release water according to our needs. And our stomach not only absorbs water, but also secretes digestive enzymes and acids to help in the assimilation of nutrients. And the lysosomes, like our cell stomach, are critical in breaking down nutrients into smaller little particles for us to absorb. So the food we eat each day not only provides basic calories, but the nutrients in our foods themselves are like information for our cells and the bacteria that live within our gut. So we've begun to know that inside our small intestine is an entire ecosystem of bacteria called the microbiome or microbiota. And so bacterial populations are normally diverse, like a rainforest. There's all kinds of species. But when we eat a diet that is more of a stress diet or a survival diet, where we're eating starch and wheat and sugar to maintain life, we create a shift into a more narrow and less abundant culture of bacteria. And those particular bacteria then will code for the expression of certain genes that lead to weight gain, inflammation, and certain amounts of stress. So that inflammation will, for example, limit the absorption of some key nutrients like vitamin D. It's no wonder that we have an epidemic of vitamin D in industrialized countries today, America in particular. So these survival bacteria create chemicals called cytokines, and that causes inflammation in the gut wall. And that leads to a breakdown in some of the cells, and that causes a secretion or transmission of these cytokine chemicals right to the lymph nodes, right next to our gut wall. About 80% of our immune system lives right there next to the small intestine and colon. And it's not by coincidence. It's to help us, our bodies, understand what's going on in the outside world. So when we have about 80% of our foods coming from near the ground, vegetables and fruits, and 20% from everything else, we tend to have a better balance of nutrients. Now, what's fascinating is redox molecules are very instrumental in helping certain bacterial cultures that are very good for us to grow. And probiotics are also helpful there as well. So hydration is quite critical for our health, and we want to have trace minerals and some salts in our water to help with the assimilation of water. 2 or 3 liters of water a day for an adult is appropriate, or half our body weight in ounces. And adequate hydration eliminates conditions like hypertension and asthma. I've witnessed just good hydration liberating people from these problems. So A is for action, REA, and action requires our membranes of our cells, our mitochondria, and the Golgi apparatus. In our lives, movement is the best sign that there is life. And when we have movement, well, we're kind of built this way. We're built to forage and move about, just like our cells get more information when they move about. And they're aware of threats when they're able to do surveillance around the tissues. And it's through movements that cells create opportunities to know more about what they need because of the communication process that can exist between cells through the presence of redox molecules. The nucleus in the cell gets new information from this movement, and that helps it adapt genetically. Oxygen is better assimilated in cells that are moving about, and likewise waste is eliminated through homeostasis. So redox molecules are critical in this step. The doorway in our cells to allow nutrients in and waste products out are literally hinged or lubricated in redox molecules. And redox molecules allow the nucleus to guide and direct the genetic expressions of many physiological reactions. So it's through feedback that these molecules provide, through communication from one cell to the other or within cells, that is absolutely fascinating. So the question is, how do we optimize our redox potential in our cells? Exercise is a big deal. It actually does improve that. So engaging in aerobic activities where you're literally sucking wind and having a hard time breathing is so good for us. And supplementing our body with balanced redox molecules will assist in our redox potential from an aerobic standpoint. Cleansing is critical for our cells. We've got to have cells be able to clean up the byproducts of metabolism and deal with the threat of toxins. So it's a big deal, and waste products that get stuck in a cell will cause that cell to stop doing its work, and it just simply sits there and doesn't do its work. So the vacuoles in the cell are critical in helping us get rid of toxins from a cell. So redox molecules play a key role in neutralizing toxins. The way they do this is by activating the effectiveness of antioxidants. So if you think about an antioxidant, let's say that's me, and I might have in one hand, this is a toxin. And if I'm grabbing a hold of a toxin, I need to find an antioxidant nearby. And if I can bring the two together, I will neutralize it. So antioxidants need reactive molecules to neutralize toxins. And in this case, a toxin is normally a positive charge, and reactive molecules have two charges. We're supposed to have a balance, but if there's not enough of these little reactive molecules to grab a hold of and bring together to neutralize a toxin, an antioxidant is not going to be able to do its work. It's there, it's in abundance, but it doesn't have its toolbox of little tiny reactive molecules that it might need. Communication or talking is a big deal for us human beings. And so that's the T, our last little component. And the nucleus and the cell membrane are critical in this. So cells talk to one another. There's an amazing amount of chatter and communication going on. And in a tissue, cells will actually send messages back to each other with these little molecules, these redox signaling molecules. And the signal will say, well, you're looking pretty bad. You need to get busy with repairing yourself. Or it might say, you're in big trouble. You need to just replicate yourself and replace yourself. Or the message might be from a nearby cell, you're so bad, you're causing trouble for our tissue. Get out of the way. We're going to find another cell to replicate and fill in your spot. So these constant decisions and communication about those decisions is critical to the health of a tissue. If this communication is not happening, your body will probably suffer serious consequences, because if a cell is out of balance and very sick and aberrant, it might start to replicate itself, and before you know it, you've got a tumor. So redox molecules are literally the messengers that are critical to communication. If I was to step on a thorn, the first thing to happen is a signal from my immune system. It's called an oxidative burst, and it will send out a signal saying there's a thorn, send out the troops, and that oxidative burst is actually a release of reactive molecules that we don't have them, we don't get the message out, we don't deal with the problem that might be happening. I want to spend a minute talking about the transcription of genes. It's a big topic today in our life. We talk a lot about nutrigenomics and the human genome, and it's everywhere. So we happen to code for about 20,000 genes that do specific coding for the production of proteins. There's a lot of other genes out there, but there's 20,000 that code for proteins, and they're very important. So what is this transcription really like? Well, think of a DNA segment. And if the DNA has to copy itself, it has to go to the copy room. And in the copy room, it's going to take a photocopy, and that photocopy is called mRNA. So that's step one. Now, the copy machine in the copy room is going to run fast or slow according to the presence of certain transcription factors. If we have an upregulation of transcription factor, it's going to happen fast. If there's not much transcription factor, the copy machine runs slowly. And that is the influence of redox biology. So we can upregulate transcription factor and code for certain DNA that we really want to be active, like a DNA that will help us adapt, or we may want to not have a DNA expressed. So 95% of our genetic material is subject to expression. Only 5% of our DNA is fixed. So most every important gene that we have, even genes that code for heart disease, are subject to switching according to the presence of transcription factor, and that is driven by redox chemistry. So then after we've got this copy room that's finished making a whole bunch of copies, we have a collection of papers. This big collection then it's all stacked up, and it represents what's called a transcriptome. And so that's the sum total of everything that's been copied. So we might have a transcript for bones, a transcript for brain cells, or something for muscle cells, and all collectively, these would be called a transcriptome. So there's a whole bunch of different transcripts that equals a transcriptome. So to sort of summarize, the mRNA leaves the copy center, goes to the ribosome house in a cell, remember the ribosomes, and the mRNA is coded into certain amino acid chains in the ribosome house. And that's where they form these giant protein molecules. And these proteins then will express our genetic potential. So when we code for certain proteins, we'll have better digestive health. We code for other proteins, we won't. And every aspect of our health is influenced by all this copying. And what drives the speed of the copy machine is our very redox molecules. It will either upregulate or not upregulate transcription factor. Well, getting back to our job in communication, we have, as people, we have a job as being social creatures. We interact with others, and without that interaction, we just don't have much joy. So our thoughts, just like in our cells, can create beliefs, and if we think them over and over, those beliefs can create deep feelings, and these are usually led to a feeling or an impulse to take action. So if you can change your thoughts, you can change your actions. But all of this is critical in our lives, just like it is in a cellular life. And just as cells listen to one another to understand exactly how we're doing, we get feedback from our nearby cells. Our lives are influenced probably most greatly when we simply listen. And so when we have interaction with people, we live longer. Proper social interactions can extend life by way more than 10%. So REACT represents an acronym of how our cells adapt and adjust. And at the core of what's going on with these cells is these very delicate but easily influenced redox reactions. And these redox molecules even influence the expression of our DNA and help us adapt. As was mentioned earlier by the Cotters, I have a website that kind of helps people learn about redox chemistry. It's one of my passions. And feel free to visit the redoxdoc.com. There's a bunch of newsletters that I try to get out as often as possible, and there's a subscription video course series as well. I'll also mention the book that they talked about. This is a nice little summary, and it goes through a number of health issues, as well as just describing the basics of redox biology. So I hope that's been helpful, and I'm very much open to questions tonight that might be on people's minds. I know that there were some questions that were sent in, and so maybe we can go to that.
Thank you so much, Dr. Ward. That was extremely informative, and we really appreciate you running through that, because I was curious as to how these stabilized molecules found you. And I was reading that in 2010, you were away on vacation in Kentucky. A friend of yours sent you a case of ASEA, and when you returned home, it was rock solid frozen. So you opened the box and you were curious about the science behind it, because you found that it was not sensitive to extreme heat or extreme cold. So that then led you into reading Dr. Gary Samuelson's book, The Atomic Medical Physicist Who Stabilized These Molecules. And you were really interested in the molecular biology, I guess, behind that. And so it was just fascinating to know that that adventure in that beginning really led you to getting back into marathon running, where you did a jig in the kitchen the day after you ran a marathon because you felt so good from your recovery, and you haven't stopped taking the molecules ever since. And that was, 8 years ago now. So if you'd like to explain that story or share any more insights, I think that'd be really helpful.
Well, okay, so I'll kind of switch to talk a little bit about the ASEA technology. And so it is the only source that I know of on Earth where you can actually find balanced redox molecules for consumption. And so I was fascinated with this science, and all of this biochemistry evolved way underneath my radar as a practicing physician. But as I looked into this, it kind of made sense. And I was quite interested in trying it. And I have some sports injuries from my high school days, and joints that hurt, and they'd been hurting for years, and they stopped hurting, and I could run. And it was remarkable. I mean, I'd done a lot of things to help these sore joints, and I'd had some results, but I hadn't gotten deep enough in that physiological process to just activate that full potential. So yeah, these joints still have challenges, but they don't hurt, and they're not falling apart as I continue to be active and participating in backpacking trips and running and stuff like that.
I do know that you use these molecules in your practice, so I'm curious how you approach that in terms of, you know, when you use them and the results that you've been getting from using them.
Okay, so my work primarily is in the area of functional medicine. So my job is to look for clues as to what's going wrong in people's physiology, kind of deep in their physiology. People come to me knowing they're not well, but usually not yet having a disease. So they're out of balance in some way. So my job is to put on my thinking cap, do a few tests, and figure out where they're out of balance physiologically. Maybe there's some adrenal stress, hormonal imbalances, gut imbalance is a common thing. It's very common. And so as I try to pull these pieces together and restore balance by providing resources to the body, one of the key resources are these molecules. And not everybody is interested, okay, because it's kind of a different thing. But for those people who are, my work is made easy. They get better more easily with a shorter period of time. And that has a way of saving them financial resources. And so for those that have a mind for this sort of science and just kind of fascinated with what might be possible for their health, they'll take to this. And as they do, my work with other nutrients, hormones, bioidentical things is much easier.
That makes a lot of sense. Thanks for sharing that with us, because the next question that we've had put to us is, are there any health conditions or challenges in particular that you would not use these molecules for?
No, because here's the way to think of this. These molecules are native to our body. We're not taking a supplement that comes from somewhere in nature. They're actually normally made inside our cells. So when we consume a balanced source of these molecules, our body goes, wow, there's me. There's some of me. There's more of me. I'm so happy to have these molecules back. And it knows what to do with them. So whatever stressor we're dealing with physiologically, when you get to the headwaters, so to speak, of where our body is operating physiologically, everything kind of downstream from redox chemistry will be enhanced. And the other beautiful thing is that as our body is seeking to work together, our different, our adrenal system and our pituitary and the structure of our body, the other functions, when the body's trying to kind of pull it all together and work in a synergistic way, when there's proper communication, everything works so much easier. So I've not yet found a condition that would be contraindicated. I know of no certain medication that would be not allowed to be taken in conjunction with something as basic as redox molecules.
So essentially what I'm hearing is safety. These molecules are safe.
Yeah. And it is remarkably safe. I know of no adverse reactions. If it's something from nature, you could be allergic because it's a foreign substance. This is not foreign. It's native and it's unique. One of the ways that I have experienced this, to know that it's a native supplement, is the flavor. The flavor of this product varies from person to person, your experience. And so after you've been taking it a while, my experience is that the flavor becomes kind of bland, where in the beginning it might be more pungent, okay? So as it becomes more bland, it's an indication that my body is more in balance. So what's happened on occasion, I picked up a germ from grandkids or from somebody at the office, and when I get sick or ill and I have a fever, the flavor goes back to really strong. Now, the product didn't change, but my ability to perceive the difference between the balance in the product and my imbalance in my body is recognized by my olfactory cells in my brain and my nose. And so as soon as my fever breaks, the flavor goes back to bland again. That could only happen with a native health supplement. It would be impossible to come from some other kind of product. So that's kind of how you know it's just part of you.
I know I was reading when you first tasted the molecules, you had said that it was exactly as you imagined it would be when it comes to cracking open a cell and just like a lemon squeezing the contents of the cell into a glass as well. So I know that definitely didn't surprise you in the beginning because of your knowledge already about the body, biochemistry, etc. So that was a really great suggestion because obviously a lot of people don't like the taste and a lot of people don't notice it. So thanks for the description there. There are some people who have intolerances to salt. So how would you handle those patients or this question?
Okay, so the manufacturing process for this product is fascinating. It's basically made from very, very pure water and very, very, very pure salt. So that it's H2O and sodium chloride, NaCl. And so as these are combined, it is then passed through a process that breaks apart the molecules into individual atoms. So there's sodium atoms and chloride atoms and hydrogen atoms and oxygen atoms that are floating around. and then they recombine into new configurations of molecules called redox molecules. So there might be 2 oxygens or 2 hydrogens and 2 oxygens, things like that. And so what is interesting is that when we consume this product, it is stable. It's remarkable that it could even be stabilized. And when we consume it, it has a way of staying in balance long enough for it to reach the part of the body that needs the molecules. Now, they do that by creating a matrix, so to speak. And part of the matrix is the presence of a little bit of sodium. And so the amount of sodium is minute. In 4 ounces, there's about the same amount of sodium as you'd find in a slice of bread. So people that are on restricted sodium diets and things like that need not worry. They're not going to be drinking enough to matter. If your doctor allows you to have a piece of bread or 2 a day, you're good to go. So it's very tiny amounts, and it doesn't lead to any problems with our health at all. It's just there to keep it stable. So it has a long shelf life.
Right. And I mean, it's amazing really how stable it is given how bioactive it is in the body. And we've been chatting about consumption. Are there other ways to apply the molecules?
Well, there is a product that you can put on your skin, and it has a little gel that allows it to be able to place the redox molecules on our skin. We absorb it that way as well. And it's remarkable how well our skin is a conveyor of redox molecules. Our skin is very hydrophilic. It loves water, doesn't love oil. And so it just soaks up the water, and the redox molecules that are have different names are very much like water, and it just soaks it up. And so the skin cells and the internal tissues will take advantage of those molecules because they'll reach sometimes great distances just from topical applications.
Well, we heard the one claim that Dan Doyle made earlier, that he's more attractive now.
He's no longer ugly.
Yeah, so we know that that's definitely from the application of these molecules. Salt and water does not do that alone.
Yeah,
so,
that's right.
So you probably hear this question a lot, and it comes down to dosage requirements. Mm-hmm. So as a medical doctor, in terms of how do you monitor that, and what sort of recommendations do you give to your patients that you can offer as advice to the health practitioners?
One of those might reflect the age of the person, but also just what state of health that they're in too. What would you say?
Okay. So here's what happens. Remember, this is a consumer health aid. We don't really dose it, and it doesn't require a specific dosing necessarily. Many times people have an intuition about what to take, but it boils down to this. If your body is well hydrated, if you've got plenty of moisture in your body, then as you are given this new resource of balanced redox molecules, your body will then make some decisions. And it says, okay, to-do list, check 1, check 2, check 3. And it starts going through a checklist of things it wants to work on. And the repair process will begin. Your capacity to do repair work is determined by your nutritional status. It's determined by the age of your body, how old you are. It's driven by how thirsty your body is for balance. And it's the opposite of the medical field. When I think of a conventional treatment for somebody with pneumonia, they're going to if they're really sick, they need massive doses of medicine, right? Because they're super sick, they need massive doses. When people are deficient in health and they are lacking redox balance, their redox potential is very low, it doesn't take much of any amount of the ASEA product for them to feel a replenishment. It's kind of like the guy in the desert who just needs a little ounce of water, and it's all of a sudden he's rejuvenated. Our cells will really make use of these products, and our bodies are wise. It knows where to use them. So I like to tell people to begin with 2 or 4 ounces twice a day. Drink a lot of water to help with the cleansing process as you start to get well, and adjust up or down according to how you feel. If you're feeling a little toxic, then adjust down. If you're not feeling much change, you could adjust up a little bit until you start to notice shift. The shift is in your cellular repair. And so the symptoms of shift would be better sleep. Oh my gosh, we sleep like a baby when we have the right balance of redox potential for our brain cells that I talked about earlier. We notice that our digestion is easier. We notice that our recovery from exercise is much more efficient, and we don't get as sore. Our muscles just don't ache as much after a good hard workout. We'll notice that joints and aches and pains that we kind of all have if we've lived long enough and played hard enough are just not as tender and sore. And so we kind of can benchmark. Even mental clarity or focus is very quickly adjusted as your body starts to get the cobwebs out and detox and, kind of clean up your thinking. And so those little benchmarks are helpful in recognizing your old, healthy, familiar self kind of coming back into play. And that's a challenge that we don't always recognize. And so as we share this with people, it's kind of fun to be sure and kind of benchmark where people are at, and it helps to recognize progress.
Well, I know you've mentioned the detox aspect, which is great, because I know a lot of people, ask that from time to time, and it's usually never severe at all. So your experience being that's fairly gentle, and yet hydration factors in to that, and obviously the overall state of health. You did touch on in your presentation, no contraindications to medicines, etc. But with the audience we have online today, is there any suggestions for people teetering off their medications, being more observant as to what's happening physiologically to themselves when they're on medications, as well as taking a C supplement, for example?
So here's what I recommend to people: is not to play doctor, and because it gets really complicated, right? And so when I have somebody who's working with an oncologist or a cardiologist or whatever, I'll tell them, look, when you see Dr. X, I want you to be sure and mention that you're doing a number of things to promote your health, and that the doctor is working very diligently on your disease. And so as you have a stronger health, you may want to remind your doctor that you're getting healthier, and you'd love to see if things haven't changed a bit. And so the doctor has certain biomarkers he might be following. It might be your LDL cholesterol level. It might be a SED rate. It might be something else. And so as your markers for the process of recovery from a disease condition improve, then the doctor will say, well, isn't that interesting? That's not supposed to happen. Maybe we should rethink this. And your next comment should be, well, maybe we can cut down on some of the treatment I'm getting so that my body can just move forward on its own. So it's a step. I think that we just, as we begin something new, like the ASEA product in your life, you want to keep as many variables fixed as possible at first. Don't change too many things at once. Just add one new thing, benchmark your progress, and then as you see markers improve and you just generally feel better, talk with your doc and suggest that you retest and consider less therapy. If your blood pressure's better, you may not need that medicine. And it's gonna be hard for the medical doctor to understand this, because they're not used to it. They're not used to seeing people improve their health. They're used to just doing kind of disease maintenance. So you got to help the doctor along. And it's kind of what I suggest. We shouldn't just stop medicines. That can sometimes backfire. Do it with your doctor's advice.
That's great advice. Thank you. And I noticed that you said from a patient perspective, it's important for people to really benchmark themselves.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's extremely helpful. I'm going to go over to the chat box now. There's a couple of questions that have been submitted. The first one I know was on organ transplants, acceptance versus rejection with these molecules.
I've never encountered any problems when people are drinking the ASEA product and working closely with their doctor, regardless of what sort of therapeutics they might be engaged with. drinking molecules that are native to your body are not going to interfere with any medical therapy. Medical therapies are designed to cause your body to do stuff. And there's no discussion. Your body's going to do what is being directed by a medical therapy. It's not up for conversation. But what you're doing with redox molecules is no different than what you're doing with eating food. Or drinking water. It's as basic as that. And so you don't have to worry about it like doing something crazy to your body. Your body will never do anything that is damaging or detrimental. Medications can, because it's a forced imposition on your physiology. And so that's why doctors are sometimes doing very dangerous things with patients. They monitor stuff and make sure you're not going to have a backfire or a side effect. But think of redox molecules as some of the most basic things in life for you. They're native to your body. You're normally making them. And for the same reason we need water, because we're 70% water, we need redox molecules because we don't always make them in abundance because we're out of whack or out of balance. And so just supplementing them isn't going to throw anything off. It's just part of who you are and what you need to operate with a positive or good redox potential.
Thank you. The next question is regarding a patient with ringworm and ASEA, because it's mentioned that it's obviously a multicellular organism, which is extremely hard to shift naturally, so without chemicals or creams. So the question is, how long would it take in a situation such as this?
Well, that's a great question. It depends on the clinical situation. So a fungus is going to take over the skin for various reasons. And one of those reasons may be that there's not a balance of bacteria to compete with the presence of the fungus. So there's a deficiency of balance already present, perhaps. So if the conditions are right, we oftentimes see that these little molecules can assist in restoring the right kind of microbiota that live in and on our skin. Just as the same way the microbiota that live in our digestive tract is so critical, all right? And so the presence of the right balance is driven by our food intake. And what's interesting is that when our gut is okay, so is our airway, our mouth, and our skin. They all kind of share the similar germs environment. So you got to take care of the whole picture. It's not just a focused therapy. Many times we think allopathically. You have high blood pressure. Well, you need a high blood pressure pill. That's an allopath approach. But when I think of skin conditions, it isn't just like, well, you need to do this then. It's like, well, what led to that skin condition? What's wrong with the balance of things? And maybe that's where we should work first, and then maybe create some symptomatic improvement. The application of ASEA topically is absolutely soothing and restorative to the skin. It feels so good. And there's nothing wrong with that. But at the heart of the matter, at the root of that fungal infection, a yeast or whatever it might be, then you may want to go a little deeper and look for what led to that. And then you get a real result. Long answer to a short question, sorry.
No, that makes a lot of sense. Thank you. We have a question that's come in terms of success for you treating potentially patients with Alzheimer's, particularly YOD. So I know we're naming conditions as such, but what's been your experience with ASEA, with these molecules and Alzheimer's disease?
Well, I need to be careful not to really refer to a specific disease in conjunction with the ASEA product, because it's making a claim that is really not fair. All right. But if you think about cognitive decline, okay, of whatever kind. So we have people today, we have kids that are not able to focus in school and their cognition is impaired. We have adults that are so stressed out and are so sleep deprived that they're falling asleep at the wheel or cannot think and remember nouns at work. And then we have people who are older who are experiencing cognitive decline at a alarming young age, really, that is not reversible. Okay, so cognitive decline is essentially brain cells that are not able to produce the right neurotransmitters to send a message to the next nerve cell. So it's a failure to communicate. All right, and that can happen because of a list of problems that are wrong in the body. But I will tell you that at the heart of the matter of communication in our nervous system, as was in my presentation earlier, is the very production of neurotransmitter chemicals and the transmission and recycling of those chemicals. All of that is driven foundationally by redox chemistry. It's at the core of every thought we have. And so providing a resource and balance is critical. Yes, these molecules can travel right across our blood-brain barrier, but so can toxins that come from those cytokines in our gut. So we got to be careful. It's not about just this for that. It's a more of a, we have to look at ourselves as a system. And oftentimes, some of the first places I witness people to experience a benefit from drinking ASEA is in their cognitive changes. They notice their mood is better. They notice they're thinking, their anxiety is less. And this can happen within seconds of consuming just an ounce of ASEA. They just notice that they're thinking better. And I've even witnessed that from people applying the topical product, the Renew product, to their face. Where does the drainage, the veins and lymph ducts from our face goes directly to our brain. That's why an infection in your sinuses can really be damaging to your brain if you're not careful. So anyway, cognition is greatly impacted by redox chemistry. And when we have a balance in our redox potential, we really help in the production and the recycling of our neurotransmitters, the very chemicals we think with.
Thank you. I know as I cycle through some of these questions, there'll be a lot that contain people wanting to know experiences with specific medical conditions. So to extrapolate what you just said in terms of the answer, when it comes to cells being involved, these molecules are going to have an impact. So I'd like to go to the questions where it has, this next one I'll just read word for word. If the cellular redox potential is basically the body's ability to deal with stress, oxidation, and antioxidants, can we create disease inadvertently by making lazy cells without enough hermetic stressors by supplementing prophylactically?
Great question. And that required a good deal of thought. Can you create a weakened state, or is there a feedback loop that exists where if we're providing these redox molecules, our body's not going to generate them on their own, right? So the answer is impossible. And the reason why is this. Our body will never, ever be influenced through the presence of some external source of redox molecule supplementation. The reason is because of where they come from. These molecules are made in the mitochondria, and they're created in the mitochondria in some cells, 1 million redox molecules a second. 1 million molecules a second in some cells. And then they get used immediately 1 million times a second. It is such turnover, all right? Well, how does this happen? It has to do with our mitochondria. So if we ever were to stop creating energy, we would die. So we're never going to stop making redox molecules because they're simply a product of creating ATP. Are we ever going to stop making ATP? Never. So just because you're drinking plenty of ASEA and have this wonderful redox potential doesn't mean you're not going to be creating an abundance of your own. Well, what if you get too many in your body? What happens? They get reconverted back into good old saline, and our body's loaded with saline. So you don't have to worry about overconsumption, and you might worry about underconsumption if you really need these molecules. And my experience has been people have an intuition about this, and they're drawn to these little molecules. So are animals. Animals are not afraid to drink this. They love it, and they know it's kind of an instinct that it's good.
We've definitely had that experience at our place.
You can't get lazy production of redox chemistry through a negative feedback loop. Doesn't exist. So we're good.
Perfect. Thank you. The next question is about oxidative stress typically leading to chronic illnesses. And they'd like to know, are there any long or short-term studies that have been done with primary or secondary outcomes?
There are thousands of those studies. I would refer you to my website. I've annotated several of those. If you just go to the section that talks about oxidative stress, there's several articles that are referenced. And in my video conference series, there's several that are referenced talking just specifically about oxidative stress. It's been a hot topic for at least 10 years, at least, maybe more like 15. And it's been studied in a variety of environments, from animals to plants, backwards and forwards. And the outcomes are astonishing when you analyze the impact of oxidative stress and the detrimental effect it has on physiological outcomes. So when we can promote a better redox potential, and in most of the studies, it's all about like antioxidant function, right? And when we have the presence of antioxidants taking care of our cells, the question is, what's going to cause the nucleus to produce more antioxidants? It's all driven by transcription factor and this coding of genes and replication. All of that is upregulated by the presence of a balanced resource of redox molecules. So if somehow we can preserve that in our cells, then we preserve our ability to protect and detox. And that is integral in preventing cancer. It's integral in preventing premature aging and breakdown in our physiology.
Thanks, Dr. Ward. I know that we have another schedule to continue on with, and you've been so generous with your time. So my apologies to the people who have submitted questions in the chat box we haven't got to. I just wanted to ask you one last question. And for the people whose answers haven't been forthcoming, because I haven't asked the question, please get with the person who has invited you to the webinar, and we'll endeavour to find the answers to your questions. So the last one is regarding homeostasis and young healthy people taking ASEA prophylactically. Will taking it reduce their own endogenous production of these redox molecules?
The answer is emphatically no. None.
Perfect.
None. And frankly, I for the last 10 years have considered myself to be pretty healthy. And, I thought I was pretty healthy before I started ever consuming these things, these little molecules. But here's the thing. If we choose to consume these as young adults, we get to choose. And what we're choosing is whether or not we want to maintain a vibrant balance or take our chances with our world today, which is not a safe place. Here's a great example. Why is it that the #1 prescription drug in most all industrialized countries like America is a thyroid supplement, Synthroid, levothyroxine, whatever it is? Why is that? 40 years ago, when I began my practice, it was not. It was number 50 or 60. It's way down the list. What's happened? We don't have more Graves' disease. We don't have more Hashimoto's disease. We've simply got thyroids that are quitting. Why are they quitting? We don't have enough iodine. It's not getting in. And the reason it's not getting in is because our world is polluted with chlorine, bromine, and fluorine, which are on the same column of the periodic table of elements. we can't assimilate enough iodine to keep our thyroids healthy. We just can't. And so we can try to flood our bodies with iodine, but that is not even working very well. We don't have a safe world. It is just not safe physiologically in many ways. There's a list of reasons. It's not just toxins, but so what are you going to do? Well, you could follow your mother's advice and say, well, get your rest, eat a balanced diet, exercise, and do things that are going to bring you joy and peace in life. But that isn't good enough for today's day. So I just ask people, what are they doing? What 21st century technology are you applying to your life today to promote your health? Because if you're not doing it, nobody else will. And so my response to that question is, well, I'm drinking these little redox molecules every day, and I'm doing my very best to provide this balanced resource of native redox molecules that are working at the core of my physiology. And that's my best bet. I take a number of supplements and nutrients, of course, but at the heart of the matter is this upstream, very critical physiological resource that we don't have, that we really benefit from having resources at. And it's here, it's available, and it makes a huge difference. So we're not going to hurt ourselves in drinking this as a preventive measure. In fact, it's just what your body asks for. It's as basic as water. In fact, it's safer than water because it doesn't have any impurities. Most of the water we have has a little bit of arsenic, a little bit of mercury. It's really hard to get all of it out, even with the best filtration system. So ASEA has none of that. It's clean. So there you go.
Thank you so much for sharing your passion. You're doing so much for the field of redox biochemistry. You've encapsulated a phenomenal overview. Thank you for your time in answering these questions. You are the Redox Doc, so yet again, if you'd like to know more from or hear more about Dr. Robertson Ward, go to theredoxdoc.com, and there's a lot of brilliant information on there, much of which Dr. Ward has actually touched on today. So yet again, my apologies if we didn't get to your question. We're so appreciative to have had the time that Dr. Ward's been able to give us, and we'll let you go and get some sleep.
All right.
Welcome to stay if you'd like, but we do respect your time and how late.
Well, thank you so much, Dr. Ward.
It's been a lot of fun. Thank you.
It's been a pleasure.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So what we'd like to do now is just take a moment and turn the time over to Alyssa. Alyssa, are you there? Need to just put her on camera for a second.
Can you hear us?
Can hear you, cannot see you. Just need to share your camera if you can. I just go to the gallery view, and there you are. Beautiful, fantastic.
Perfect. Can you hear us, Alyssa?
Well, you're a little bit crackly. So.
Beg your pardon? No.
If they can hear us, but just wanted to say a really big thank you to Dan Doyle for his amazing story and sharing your journey on what you've done personally and how Redox has been able to support you, Danny, and thank you for your time and coming all the way down from Sydney to Adelaide. And thank you so much to Dr. Rob Ward. You know, his expertise in redox cycling molecules is just amazing, as you could tell. So thank you for sharing a little bit of your knowledge, Dr. Rob, with us, and really looking forward to learning more about how we can use these molecules for our own health, but also for how we can integrate this into our practice and sharing it with our patients. If you'd like to learn how to include this in your practice or how to get this for your own health, please go back to the person that introduced you to this meeting so that we can share with you how to do that in a safe and practical way for you. But we do have some amazing other health practitioners, and they're going to just teach us around how they are using this in their own clinic and for their own personal lives. So we'll hand it back to Bart to introduce you those amazing health practitioners.
Got the pleasure of introducing Sally Diamond. Sally has got 28 years experience as a therapist. She's practiced in Australia, Canada, and the United States. She's treated countless clients throughout the world as the head therapist aboard the Crystal a Symphony cruise ship. She's spent 5 years working as the head therapist in the medical team on the WTA tennis tour. Something that's kind of an interesting fact about Sally is that she missed the Australian Olympics by qualifying by 0.04 of a second, which is absolutely heartbreaking. But she has just had tremendous experience with working with athletes and as an athlete herself. And we're excited to hear Sally just share how you've shared this with people and how you've used it personally and what you've done in terms of your practice as well.
Hello, thank you, Bart and Alyssa, and welcome everybody to the call. I'm excited to be here. Hopefully you can all hear me okay. I'm just going to share my screen here because I have a couple of little slides. So hopefully I don't have any technical issues. There we go. So my name's Sally Diamond. I am a health practitioner and I practice a number of modalities in my clinic, and I'm a health and wellness extraordinaire, let's just say. I live and breathe health and wellness, and I love everything that I do. I like to promote taking care of your own body and giving my clients tools in how to look after themselves. But of course, as they mentioned, I was a swimmer. For those of you that have been watching the Commonwealth Games, they're all amazing athletes, all of the athletes, but the swimmers in particular close to my heart because I know what goes into training for that event. I was a 50-meter swimmer. I did one lap, I took one breath, and I did it in 26 seconds, which seems kind of slow today, but back then that was the kind of the fast times. Now my life is, as a therapist, and I'm working really hard. So, when you're a swimmer, you're burning the candle at both ends, and I would completely burn myself out. I ended up with some severe chronic fatigue issues and glandular fever and quite sick. So it's not uncommon in the swimming and athletics world to end up like that because you're just really burning the candle. When my swimming career ended, my fitness and everything pretty much ended with it. And I went to bed and I stayed in bed for quite a period of time. The only thing that got me out of bed was really alternate medicine. And that's what led me into that pathway of wanting to study and become, involved in nutrition and acupuncture and massage and all the bodywork therapies. So, when you're dealing with someone's body and someone's fatigue like that, it really helped me to heal. So, when I became a health professional and started to treat people that were, athletes and pushing themselves, I was also pushing myself and I worked myself to the bone. So it must be in my nature to work really hard. But, what happened is I actually stopped exercising and I stopped being that athlete because I was too busy taking care of people and saying yes and just standing at that treatment table and really, really working on people's bodies. And when I was working on the tennis circuit, it was not uncommon for us to be at our table for 15 hours a day. When you watch the Grand Slams and the Wimbledons and the Australian Open, the people standing in the back room down in the dungeons, they're there from morning till night, and that was me. So I was putting all these bodies back together when they would come off court and making them, be able to go out there and compete at their finest. So I always take a look now at health professionals and I go, if we aren't healthy, then how do we keep our patients and our families healthy? So when I first came across these products, I was burning the candle at many, many ends, and I was pretty fatigued and I had a skin issue, and, I really wasn't taking care of myself in the fashion that I should, and I certainly wasn't exercising. So when I came across this, I was a big skeptic, like some of you might be sitting there listening. And, I sat there for a long time just going in disbelief. I don't believe it. How can this really be true? And why isn't other people talking about this? Well, the answer is that it's new. No one really knows about it because, as Dr. Ward spoke about, ASEA is the only way to supplement with redox molecules. So I did get off the skeptical fence and I did start to use it for myself and for my family. And we had amazing success with, everything that occurred in our house. We pretty much put it to the test and we used it on the children and anything that just kind of came up. So we had great results, and then I started to want to share it with my clients and with my friends and with anyone that I came in contact with that I really thought that this could benefit. So it was really a natural progression of me finding something that I loved, that worked, and me then communicating that to someone else. Whether they did something with it or not and they sat there on the fence, that really didn't bother me because I wanted to share that information, hoping that at some point they too would get off the skeptical fence and try it. And in my experience of 3 years of using it now, I'm healthier than I've ever been. My clients are recovering at a much faster rate than they ever have been. I always kind of make a joke that when I find a technology that works, I use a scanner device in my clinic as well, and a key device. And of course, when you're using these technologies, I like to be able to teach my clients how to have that ability to do that at home as well. So there is home devices that I teach people on how to use. And when I combine that with the Redox technology, and they can be treating themselves at home, their recovery time is much better and their time in the clinic is much less. So people joke and say, why are you giving away all your secrets, Sally? Don't you want to stay in business? And I laugh and say, well, the world is sick and the world is in asleep. They can't wake up, they're tired, and they're just not being able to cope with everyday life. So if we can give them tools at home to help them heal and recover and keep them out of my space so that I can try and have a day off, then, you know, I laugh and say that all I'm trying to do is have a day off and keep people well. So now that I have these technologies in my practice, I can really give people the power back to heal themselves and not be so reliant on us as therapists to keep putting them back together. So this is some of the things that I enjoy in my time off. So I was able to go back to competing and doing triathlons. I'm a terrible runner. I like to swim. I don't like to swim and train, but I like to get out there and compete. So I tend to not do a whole lot of training. I'm a hot yoga fanatic, and I like to go and stretch my body and turn my phone off and sit in the hot room. But, you know, I do go out and compete, and I love to still compete. So I've competed in 3 Olympic distance triathlons in the last couple of years. And like I said, I haven't done a lot of training for it, as in swim, bike and run. But what I do is I consume enough of the products that it tops me up. So when you're competing and you're stressing yourself at any level, whether it's you're a fly-in, fly-out worker and you're working 10 and 12 and 2 weeks straight, or you're just pushing yourself on the track or the field or the bike, your body is actually depleting in these redox molecules. So if we can keep them topped up, then our ability to function is, you know, much more efficient. So I've been able to go back to sport, go back to competing and doing, you know, some of the things that I love to do. And it's not taxing or straining on my week or my body. I can get to the end of the week and I go out and have fun with the kids. So, you know, it's like the kids got their mum back, and I stopped working so hard with my clients because they were able to start maintaining themselves a little bit as well. So I always like to challenge people and say, are you doing what you love? Because every single minute counts. And if we can keep the health professionals healthy and happy, you know, then we can actually maintain and teach the people that are coming to see us how to also be healthy and happy. And if we can all do that together, then we can have a really, you know, amazing practice life. And, you know, people love it when you can help them and you can make them well. So I just wanted to share a little bit about my story there on, you know, how I do it. And I'm passionate about ASEA. I'm passionate about everything that ASEA offers as a company. And, you know, I'm really excited to be part of this movement where we really are going to start changing the health of the world and the people around us that we love. So I think that pretty much sums up my little spiel. I would encourage you to do some homework, do some research that Dr. Ward presented there on his website. Really get in and find the information that you need, and certainly talk to the person that invited you here today, because you know, they've been on a journey, they've been using the products, and really reach out to people that are using it, because they'll tell you what it's doing for them.
Thank you, Sally. That's great. I'm just, you can unshare your screen. Let's see, hang on. That's just got to advance this to the next slide if I can. There we are. All right. Got the pleasure of introducing Dr. Wayne Pickstone. Dr. Wayne is a doctor of Chinese medicine. He's been in practice for the last 30 years. He's a naturopath, herbologist, and acupuncturist. So Wayne, are you with us?
Certainly am. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Okay, I think your camera is muted. Maybe, let me see. Nope, you're good. You're good.
Okay, excellent. So just going to share the screen. Okay, so we should be all there, hopefully now. How's that? All there now? All good, okay. Thank you everyone. And thank you, Sally, that was, and Dr. Ward. It's really interesting when you look at the ASEA molecules or the redox molecules and what they do. And what I'd like to share with you today is something that has really helped me to look at what I call the 5 guidelines for deciding if I'm going to actually work with a product or not. And what I've found is the first guideline that I like to look at is the ethos or the culture of a company or who's at the top. So the word ethos means noun, the characteristic spirit or of a culture, era or community, as manifested in its aspirations, moral code, attitudes, beliefs, principles and standards, and also ethics. In a company, this ethos is determined by its founders and management. And the reason I wish to share with you is, over the years, over 30 years of doing this, there's been a lot of companies that I've brought on board, and that ethos is still there today, even after being with them for 28 years or 30 years. And this is where I really look for in terms of the people who are at the top and the founders. So the founders are Virtus Norton and also Tyler. I've had the pleasure of meeting Tyler Norton, and you can feel that ethos, the principles, you can feel it emanating from his heart every time you meet this gentleman. There's just the room is full of you feel really in great gratitude. And I haven't had the pleasure of meeting Virtus, and I believe from all the people that have spoken to me about who have met Virtus say exactly the same as well. So as mentioned, the first most important thing is the ethos, and then how that then carries through to the company. So the top management, also within the science and advisory, and also even within the staff who are on the phones. And when you're in the presence of these people, you can feel that ethos emanating from them as well. So the first one is ethos. The next one is, I'm going to put into two, which is the minimum of 5 years in business and company profitability. And for me, this is important as well, because we want to be using a product that, say we're 5 years or 10 years or 15 years down the track, we don't want that to be pulled because unfortunately the business failed or the company profitability wasn't there, and unfortunately just is not there when we're looking for it if something happens. So this is about the company and also about the research. ASEA, the company, is based on 10 years of research before the products were launched into the market in 2010. Significant growth every year and increase in stability. And ASEA is perfectly positioned ahead of the growth that will come in the next 3 to 5 years in the health, wellness and anti-aging industries. And they've built their whole plant around this growth in the next 3 to 5 years, which is fantastic as well. So the markets, currently the products are in 30 plus countries. We see huge business possibilities in all of these markets. Less than 1% of people currently know about the ASEA product and even Redox molecules. And the Redox molecules were, the first Nobel Prize was only in 1998. So this is why not very many people know about Redox or the products of ASEA. And this one over here is, just can't see it, thousands of medical and health professionals working globally to reach those in need for their health. And this is the beautiful part about working with a company that is global, because I'm sure like myself, a lot of your clients are overseas or can be not in your own state or even your own town. We do have a global market now, and this is fantastic for those practitioners who do have that. Sorry, I just lost it. Next one. Don't know what's happened. Wait a sec, sorry. Here we go. Technical thing. So that's the 3 there. The next one is scientific validation. And we've had a lot of scientific validation with Dr. Ward. And the scientific validation, you've seen this slide in terms of the redox signaling molecules that have been published in peer-reviewed studies. And please, and this is what I did, and I believe this is what Sully did as well. And I was a skeptic as well. Luckily, I was an open-minded skeptic, but I took a year doing my scientific validation. And I went to PubMed and I looked at all these different articles, and then I read a lot of books about it as well. And the scientific validation is important, being practitioners. Also, ASEA commissioned the Tourette Laboratories, an independent lab, to look at genes and the way genes are expressed. And these results are unique and exciting. ASEA Redox is a signaling supplement, and the pathways expressed are signaling genes. And the ASEA products, what they did is they did an 8-week study, and the ASEA Redox was shown to activate 5 important gene signaling pathways by up to 51%, that positively impacted 5 major areas of our health, including the immune system, the inflammatory response, the cardiovascular health, and also healthy digestion and the hormone modulation. And one of the genes that was activated was the NRF2 gene. And the NRF2 gene does a lot of positives, but one of the things it does, it increases, and this has been independent studies showing this as well, it's got the potential of increasing our glutathione by up to 500%, and some studies up to 800%. So this is a major detoxing pathway that is now opened up to help the body to detox. But these genes that are modulated in a positive way up to 31%. So far, these are the 5 guidelines for deciding if I'm going to work with a product. Ethos has been looked at. Number 2 is minimum of 5 years in business. Company profitability we've looked at. And scientific validation is number 4. And the last one. So you can have the first 4 boxes ticked as a clinician, but clinically, do they work? And I know personally over 30 years being in practice, that sometimes we get all the science, we get the other few boxes ticked up the top, and then when we bring it into the clinic, it just doesn't work, even though the science is unbelievable. And what I did initially is going back to 2015, I had my own health challenges back then, and I had one particular thing that really caused me some real grief where I couldn't walk more than 10 or 15 meters. And I went all around Australia trying to actually get myself well in that year. And in a year, I spent over $15,000 trying to get myself well. And eventually I come across this technology. In a couple of weeks, things changed dramatically. And then after 5 to 6 months, I had my own clinical experience. And then I brought it into the clinic. And clinically, it's just amazing how people respond to these particular redox molecules. I think Dr. Ward's synopsis of what happens in his clinic is absolutely fantastic in terms of how it helps his clients and patients, and exactly the same as myself. It's just incredible how it helps people. And then speaking to dozens and dozens upon dozens of other practitioners, medical doctors and other naturopaths and acupuncturists who have brought this technology into their clinic, they are just as amazed as myself in terms of the clinic validity when we bring it into our clinic as well. So they're the 5 things that I look at when I look at a product. And this particular product, the ASEA product, basically has a tick with each one of them. So I'm hoping the sharing of what I've gone through today helps you. And it's just something that is really helps my clients, because I think that we're in this, every one of us is in this to help our clients to get to another level of health. And personally, I've found the redox molecule something that helps that enormously. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Wayne.
Thank you very much.
Yeah,
Pleasure.
really insightful to hear how this has helped you and helped with what you're doing. And I know that you're on a quest and a mission to get this out to the world as well. So look, just what we'd like to do is to shift gears just a little bit and really just to wrap up. And I'd like to invite our good friend, Mr. Dan Doyle, who started this off to begin with. If Danny'd like to just come up and just tell us your final thoughts and kind of wrap up the presentation from here. Are you there, Danny?
I am. Can you hear me, guys?
Yeah, loud and clear.
Good. Still got some people in the room, but I'm going to focus on, there's a lot of people on this call, still 150 people left on this call. Sorry about the technical issues that we had and the unstable internet, but I can assure you, everybody, one thing that will never be unstable is these molecules in this bottle. Not going to happen. Just to quote Dr. David Silverman, who does work very closely with us, he said, as we all know, that knows anything about this, if it was a drug, it would be deemed the greatest drug of all time. Other quotes, Gary Samuelson, another quote, Dr. Gary Samuelson said that this technology has the potential to spearhead the greatest advances in health that the world has ever seen. You're starting to get an idea of how big this is, guys? Yeah. So we've got a lot of health practitioners, doctors, we've got a lot of people on this call that may be looking at it for their practices. If you can implement it, it'd be fantastic. Make sure you reach out to the person that introduced you on this call to see if that's possible. If you can't, or if you're concerned that that is the case, at least you know about it as a health practitioner for the sake of you and your loved ones, because this is an enormous breakthrough. There is no supplement, there is no skincare range on the planet that can get close to what this does for the human body. As a matter of fact, anything with a cell, these molecules that we're producing naturally, that we're lacking in, is the body's weapon of choice, and we've got them in a bottle. So you can replenish your body, top up, and potentially take your health in the right direction, which on the commercial side makes ASEA the most compelling opportunity that I've ever come across. We need all the help that we can get to share this, to get this to the world as quickly as we can. I'm only one person. We're all individuals that are trying as best as we can to get this to humanity as quickly as possible. We know what it can do for people. Scientifically impossible not to work. I want to thank Bart and Melissa and Alyssa for putting this call and the room together. Sally, thank you for coming on. Dr. Wayne Pickstone, Dr. Rob Ward's not on now, but we really appreciate his support from us in the field as an independent third party. It's incredible support. Just another plug for his website. If you write this down, the Redox doc, THEREDOX doc.com, the redoxdoc.com. So check out the website. You can subscribe to his newsletters and everything that he provides on a monthly basis. Incredible information. Back over to you guys, and thanks for putting this together and having me here. Thanks for having us here.
Thank you, and I'll just say again, thanks for everybody that doesn't matter. Yeah, thank you. It doesn't matter how many how many trial runs you do. There's always sometimes a technical glitch, which makes it very frustrating. So we appreciate your patience. We did that whether you're online or at the meeting. Sometimes some internets are slower than others and so forth. But I think it was very exciting. Danny, we appreciate hearing your story. Appreciate hearing from everyone. Sally, Dr. Wayne Pickstone, Dr. Rob Ward, Alyssa, thank you for your time and efforts. And please get with the person who invited you to this presentation. If you like what you hear, if you have some questions, we're here to help you with all that. And with that, we'll go ahead and wrap up the presentation.
Thank you so much, everyone. See you later.